I want to welcome you to another video drasha. This Shabbos, again, the weekly Torah portion is preempted by another holiday. The holiday that we celebrate starting Friday night and continuing on Shabbos and Sunday is Shmini Atzeret, which is partly the 8th day of the holiday of Sukkot, but it is also a holiday in its own right as well. But I particularly want to address the holiday that we generally observe on the second day of Shmini Atzeret. And this is the holiday of Simchat Torah, or Simchat Torah, the holiday of the happiness or the rejoicing in the Torah. It's really quite a remarkable holiday. And in my opinion, it perhaps captures the essence of Judaism better than any other holiday. The fact is that this holiday of Simchat Torah is really the culmination of this entire period of the high holidays, of the days of awe. Not only is it the culmination because it's the last day of this holiday period, but because it really represents a high point, a peak in what has been a growing experience. The fact of the matter is we started this holiday period. It's hard to think of this, but it was really back at the beginning of the month of August, because it's the month prior to Rosh Hashanah, the month of Elul, is when we start blowing the shofar. It's when we're supposed to start focusing on tshuva, on doing repentance, on looking inward at our lives and thinking about how we can change. All of that began a month prior to Rosh Hashanah back in the early part of August. And then we get to Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, from Yom Kippur to Sukkot, from Sukkot to Shmini Atzeret, from Shmini Atzeret, the second day is Simchat Torah. And I heard many years ago a drasha on this that I've always enjoyed, and that is that one can look at how these holidays represent a growing spiritual depth and connectedness to God and to the Torah. Because if we look at this from the following perspective, on Rosh Hashanah, we open the Ark a lot. There are many times when, for various prayers, we open the Ark, but then we close the Ark back up. We don't even take out the Torahs. On Rosh Hashanah, we only take out the Torahs for the Torah reading. Then on Yom Kippur, we get to Erev Yom Kippur to Kol Nidre, and the custom is that we open the Ark and we take out the Sifrei Torah. We take out the Torah scrolls, and generally members of the congregation hold the Torahs in front of the congregation while the Kol Nidre is chanted. Now this year we didn't do it that way for reasons of safety, but that's generally how it's done. But then what did we do? We put the Torahs back in the Ark, close the Ark. Then we get to Sukkot. On Sukkot, the practice is we open the Ark, we take out the Sefer Torahs, and now we march around the Sefer Torahs carrying our lulav and etrog. So we now march around the Sefer Torah during Sukkot. And then finally we get to Simchat Torah, the culmination of all of this. And what do? Now we open the Ark, we take out the Sefer Torahs, and we march around with the Sefer Torahs. We march around and around the synagogue, dancing with the Torah scrolls. I heard Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the former chief rabbi of the British Commonwealth, comment. He says, could you imagine in England or America going into a courtroom and seeing the judges dancing around with their law books? It's an absurdity. It's something that would be completely unimaginable. And yet, to some extent, that's what we're doing. We're marching around, we're dancing around with a kind of abandon we're dancing around the synagogue with a book that is primarily one that gives us laws and commandments. You know, the holiday of Simchat Torah is unusual too in that it was developed. It was really created by the Jewish people. Simchat Torah is not mentioned in the Torah. It's not mentioned anywhere else in the Bible. It's not based on historical events like, say, Purim or Hanukkah. As a matter of fact, Simchat Torah is not even mentioned in the Talmud. Probably the earliest reference we have to Simchat Torah is during the so-called Geonic period. That would be in probably the 8th, 9th, 10th century CE. And really, most of the customs of Simchat Torah were developed much later in Europe during the 14th, 15th, 16th century. So this holiday was really created by the Jewish people. And it's a holiday of total happiness. It's a holiday on which our ritual, what do we do on Simchat Torah? We dance, we march around, we read the Torah. The other thing that should be noted is that Simchat Torah was certainly created in the diaspora. How can we know this? Because when does it take place? On the second day of Shmini Atzeret. That is Simchat Torah. There's only a second day of the holidays outside of the land of Israel. So certainly this is a holiday that developed late. It developed among Jews in the diaspora. And one really can, I think, appreciate this holiday when you think of Jews who were dispersed, mostly living in conditions that were not all that great, and yet they create a holiday of pure rejoicing, pure happiness. It's not a fast day. It's not a day on which we sit on the floor or clap ourselves. It's a day of dancing and happiness. And I think that that really does represent the essence of Judaism, the idea that we truly rejoice in the fact that we have the Torah, that we can learn the Torah, we can study the Torah, we can live our lives in accordance with the Torah. And this book, which is a book that contains the mitzvot, the commandments, that is our greatest joy. Now this year, of course, celebrations are going to have to be restrained. This is a unique time. But I think even during this time when we can't really celebrate Simchat Torah as it should be, at least we can think about it. And it certainly is something that we should do. Let's think about the fact that Jews rejoice in the Torah. This is not a burden. It's not something that we do because, I have to do it, or, schwer zu sein a Yid, as they used to say, it's hard to be a Jew. No, this is a holiday that says it's wonderful to be a Jew, and we love having the Torah. Good Shabbos and good Yontif.